Okay, to illustrate secant of x, we were graphing, just to kind of show you how this still applies in graphing the original function. We still created a cosine function that had an amplitude of 2. As you can see, it goes up to 2, down to -2. There's no vertical shift, so the midline is still 0. And there is a slight phase shift of pi/4 to the right. Okay, period stayed the same. So when we graph secant of x, okay, remember the first thing we do is we need to graph our asymptotes once we've graphed cosine, the cosine function. So at every intersection of the midline, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label these asymptotes. Okay, these asymptotes are exactly where the cosine function goes right through the x-axis in this case, but it will be wherever your cosine graph goes through the midline. So if there's a vertical shift, then you won't be drawing the asymptotes going through where it goes through the x-axis. It simply is wherever it goes through the midline. Don't need that one. So you can see here, you've got your asymptotes drawn in. The next step is to label our minimum points and our maximum points. So label our maximum here, our minimum here, maximum, and then minimum. The next step would be simply to draw in a parabola in between our asymptotes and making that minimum or maximum point a vertex. So let's go ahead and graph this. So we'll graph a new function. This is going to be 1 over cosine of x minus pi/4. For some reason, this computer program won't let me graph secant of x just by itself. It's kind of funky. Go back in and change that to a 2. Double check to make sure I got this correct, and I should see the correct graph drawn here. As you can see, the cosecant drew the parabolas at the minimums and maximums. They stay within our boundary lines of our asymptotes, and that's all there is to it. Graphing secant or cosecant is simply as easy as graphing sine or cosine of those functions. Okay, and you can see the video on graphing the sine function, which is basically the same thing as graphing cosine. You can see how to graph that, and once you get that part of it down, it's just as easy as picking your minimums and maximums and drawing these asymptotes and then drawing your parabolas in. Okay, the hard part is learning how to graph sine and cosine.